Bass Agenda presents Spacelab.
We have another great episode lined up for the Spacelab posse this month, featuring Greg Wilson, the first club DJ to play Electro to a mostly black audience at a club called Legends in Manchester in the northeast of England. Join us as Greg takes us through the history of electro and hip-hop in the United Kingdom and the part that he played in transforming human beings into dancing cyborgs. I'm your host, Billy Proctor, the Electro Doctor, and as always, I'm joined by Borg Brother Klein, Mr. Bass Junkie himself. We'll be with you after this track, Time, Space, Transmat, by One Atkins as Model 500, released in 1985 on Metroplex Records. Is it techno or electro? Techno electro, or maybe electro techno? Let us know what you think in the chat, Space Labbers. So one of the reasons that Spacelab exists is that electro has been excluded from both the history of UK dance music and hip-hop, which is even more remarkable given how far and wide it's spread across the country through the Street Sounds compilations. And hip-hop landed in the UK through electro rather than rap. Malcolm McLaren doesn't seem to receive enough credit for illustrating the four elements of hip-hop to UK audiences: DJing, graffiti, breakdancing and MCing. And that was with the video of Buffalo Gals featuring the world's famous Supreme team. And video was such an important conduit for the introduction of hip-hop to the UK. Films such as Wild Style, Breakdance the Movie, or Breaking as it's titled in the US, and Beat Street. But it was the Street Sounds Electro compilations that began in 1983 that gave UK audiences the first taste of what would become later known as hip-hop. And that term was not widely used in Britain until 1984, with the BBC documentary Beat This, A Hip-Hop History. We've talked about our first introduction to electro, Phil, but it bears repeating. For me, it was Turbo with the Broom in Breakdance the Movie, sweeping and popping to the Kevorkian remix of Tour de France by Kraftwerk. What was it for you? What was the very first time you heard something?
Oh, okay. The very first time for me, it's got to be one of two things. It's either Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, The Message. I remember that playing a lot. I think I was on holiday in Cornwall at the time on the summer, and I kept hearing that song and thinking, this is great, whatever it is, and then finding out what it was, but not piecing anything together, just think it was just like a song, you know. Then it would have been Buffalo Girls, Malcolm McLaren and the world famous Supreme team. That was probably a point where I still didn't really know what was happening, but I'm seeing all the visual, the video with it, the Rocksteady crew in there. I'd never heard of them before. Still didn't know much about it even after watching, but I watched the video and I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is crazy. And the music was really good too. So there was those two records were the first thing I heard, but I hadn't at that point put anything together. It was only when my cousin, who I've mentioned to you before, Steve, jumped in my mum's car. We picked him up one day and he goes, Phil, listen to this. And he gave me Electro 1 on cassette and popped it in the tape deck and played it. And I was just like, this sound from outer space coming through the speakers. I think he must have been listening to it. And I think it was Nucleus Jam on Revenge was the song that was playing when it first put in. I know that's not the first track on the album. It's Pac-Man, I'm a Pac-Man. But that's what I remember coming in and just like hearing the 808 and these chipmunk vocals and just really funky bass line and great synth work in there, and just being my mind was blown. I mean, I was 13, I think, at the time, just turned 13. It was 1983. I believe it came out, I think people have researched this now, it was the end of 83, that's when I first heard it. And that, I still didn't know about hip hop or anything at that time. I didn't even know how people were mixing records. So like the whole, each side is mixed. And I was like, how is this happening? How is each thing blending in? And I didn't understand it, but I couldn't, but I was like, it's great, whatever it is, I love it. And every track on there, I loved. I didn't really like the K9 Corp one much, which which uses Atomic Dog by George Clinton. I wasn't so into that one. But the rest of it, G-Force, Feel the Force, Pac-Man, like I said, Wiki Wiki song, Breakdance Electric Boogie, all of that. I mean, it was just such a great mix of music. And it was all to me, sounding very futuristic, very spacey. There was computer games and all the things that I was into at that age and, before and after, which really hooked me right in from that moment. It was such a pivotal moment for me. Everything was like, I focused on electro from there and I've never stopped.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Buffalo Gals video, and in the episode today with Greg Wilson, he talks around how he was screaming that in a nightclub and everyone just stopped. And he understood now what culture shock meant. When it was like, I mean, you were 13-year-old, so you really don't have that much experience in the world yet. But these were adults just saying, holy fuck, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, funnily enough, all the things in the 80s or the late 70s into the early 80s, all those, what they would call crazes, which are really big things now. So, I mean, you got obviously b-boying, which the media labelled as breakdancing, was a huge thing. I mean, it's just such an amazing thing to watch. I still watch videos today of new crews coming out and the most amazing moves, just incredible what it's become. And it's going to be in the Olympics this year, which is an amazing feat, So I'm definitely going to be watching that. So you got breaking, which was visually just stunning to watch, and people doing these moves, and you're just like, oh, I wish I could do that, and you try, and you had to really persevere to be able to pull that off. But, that graffiti looked amazing as well. I remember at school where they had the Subway art book in the library, and we'd always go and have a look at that. I love that book. The music blew my mind, like I say. And the scratching, I was like, what is that as well? You know, people cutting up records, and that blew me away. And then, you know, on top of it, the MC, I wasn't so much into the MCing at first. You know what I mean? That wasn't what grabbed me. I was more about the music and the sounds within the music, like the vocoders, because, you know, sounds from outer space and robots and all that sort of thing. I'm totally a sci-fi head, so that really appealed to me as well. So all of these things just hit. But if you think about it, in the early 80s, there were so many things, like BMX was becoming a huge thing. Stickboarding had been, you know, and was still a huge thing. Roller skating, as we've spoken before, because a lot of DJs in those times, like, were DJing at roller rinks, you know, this was roller skating music, the electro sound, that sort of, you know, 120 to 130 BPM, great for skating to. People would skate to it all the time. I used to skate to it all the time. It was just, everything hit, and it all just became like a youth movement, you know. It was just so big. And so many people like myself were just blown away by it and hooked immediately. And that's why I remember it so fondly, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of my experience was similar. I wasn't so much bothered about the rapping. It was the electro and the kind of, it was very, very strange. But I was reminded the other day by a friend who I've known since I was a kid that we actually put on a breakdance exhibition in junior school where we're standing on the stage. And I asked him what song was it that was playing, and he said it was Ain't No Stopping Us by Ollie and Jerry. So we jumped. I mean, we were, like I said before, I wouldn't make any claims that we were great or anything, but I could spin on my back, I could do some popping and stuff like that. Could never really get the windmill. But I was age 10 when we were doing that, so really fond memories. And then I won a competition, a drawing competition at the same age of 10, when I drew the poster of Breakdance the movie in pencil. And I still had it, but in my mind it was like fucking brilliant, but I bet it wasn't. I mean, it was just probably that. But yeah, so yeah, really good memories and stuff. And you're right, it was kind of like a matrix where lots of things happened at once. Let's not forget 1980, Empire Strikes Back, 1983, Return of the Jedi. I was a Star Wars kid, I was an Electro kid, I was a computer games nut. All these things coming together.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't just stop there. I mean, science fiction films, I mean, you think about Terminator coming out as well around then, and Alien had come out in 79, and Aliens was 86. All of these things were like, there was just such a rich, I'm going to say culture, but just so many things going on at the same time, which just, you know, but then you're a kid as well. So I guess, like, you know, when you're growing up, everything's exciting. You find your, I mean, I'd already been into music before I'd heard the electro, but I'd been going through a bit of a lost phase. I didn't know where to go because I was really into the ska two-tone thing from like the late 70s into the early 80s, and then I was just waiting for something else, and this hit, and I was just like immediately hooked. Like I say, it just took over, and then it's never been the same for me ever since. You know, maybe I'm still reliving my youth or something, because you do, you know, you latch onto things at a certain time in your life. I mean, it will happen to kids growing up. They'll find something and go on with that probably, and remember it fondly throughout their life. I mean, this is how it works, isn't it? And I guess it's why some would become grumpy old men. Oh, it's not as good as it was in my day, because you hear that a lot, don't you? But I mean, I think we all have our life experiences, and for me, and for you obviously too, electro was one of those big catalyst moments in your life, and it's stuck with you, and you know, because it's such a great thing and it's such a great sound, and long may it continue.
Yeah, and like the influx of electronic music in the UK, that had kind of been accelerating since the late 70s with the post-punk wave of synth pop artists. So, you know, Human League, Cabaret Voltaire, Orchestra Manoeuvres in the Dark, and of course Gary Newman, who I went to see last night in Bournemouth. 45th anniversary of Replicas and The Pleasure Principle, and that's all he played was songs from those two albums. So Cars, Our Friends Electric, Down in the Park. I got a signed copy of a 7-inch off Gary Newman. So yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. Africa Bambaataa said that Gary Newman was more important than Kraftwerk in the development of electro hip-hop, and I'm sure older listeners recall that Newman was roundly derided in the music press of the day for using synthesizers, which were dismissed as a novelty and a gimmick. He was accused of being a second-rate Bowie clone who was ruining music. But of course, time progresses. He's now seen as an icon, a pioneer. But he really was unique and original in the late 70s and early 80s. And Bambaataa even did a duet with him at one point, which was a cover version of Metal from the Pleasure Principle album. But all this stuff with electronic music, you know, Greg Wilson, our guest today, he was attacked for leading the kids astray. And black club audiences in the North we're on the cusp of a musical revolution by demanding electronic grooves and beats like, as we'll hear in the interview, Don't Make Me Wait by the Peach Boys, Time by Stone, On a Journey by Electric Funk, and Thanks to You by Cinnamon. all of which Greg mentions in the interview as foundational tunes for the Legend crowd, and we'll be hearing some of these electronic-infused soul and funk tracks in this episode of Spacelab. So for you, Phil, I know you're electro head. You say that you're reliving your youth. I don't think you ever grew up, mate, to be honest. So you're not reliving anything. The only difference is you've got a wife, kids and a job now, but you never lost the electro groove. You've always been. What about other electronic music for you? Or other music? Are you just an electronic guy, or do you like music?
No, I like music in general. I mean, I tend to only buy electro if I buy anything at all now. I mean, that's been the case for a long time to DJ with. I guess it's like, when I started DJing, I had all sorts of music, because you had to at that time as well. You'd be playing wherever, house parties or little venues and things with a friend of mine and another guy called Alex Hazard, is another friend of mine who went on to do quite big things in the club circuit. I'd have hip hop, house and soul was how I used to advertise my little business card back then. So I was buying house, I was buying acid house, I was buying hip hop, obviously, electro, Miami bass a little bit later on, and all those styles, and then some bits of stuff that maybe was even charting. I remember having bits and pieces in my sets, but more like funky stuff. But as time's gone on, I had to sort of decide on, like Dave Noller was saying this in his interview last month, that he had to decide where he was going with things. Was he going to stick with the hip hop or more on the electronic side of things, which is where he found he took more pleasure from listening to that music. And this is the same thing for me. I was like, I loved hip hop, but as hip hop moved away and got slower, or it moved away from the electronic side of things, I found myself searching out for the electronic sounding hip hop, and then really going into a rabbit hole with that. So then moving, into, I was buying techno as well, obviously, some early stuff, but not loads. But I was interested in the Detroit stuff later on, like stuff on Metroplex, and then later on UR, Underground Resistance, and labels like that, because they were using that old technology, using the drum machines and using the 303 a lot, but synthesizers that I liked, and vocoders were in there in some cases. So I was just searching out that sound. It might not have been the exact sound, but it would have elements of it. Or maybe on a B side, there'd be an electro track, there'd be a 4 to the floor track on one side, and then there'd be an electro version. So back in those days, when there was a drought, I'd be searching out and I'd be buying anything that even had a vaguely resembling a numbers beat, because then at least I could play it because I wanted to hear that. I didn't want that to disappear. So that was it for me.
Yeah, and you're talking about techno and rave and stuff like that, and in the history of UK dance music, electro is usually skipped over in favour of rave culture and the so-called Second Summer of Love in 1988. It leaves a kind of 5-year gap in UK history, which Greg describes as the missing link, which is something that I'm hoping to capture and document in the book that I'm writing. Well, I will capture that. Obviously, that's a massive period that's gone. But Greg calls it the Ibiza myth, doesn't he, when these people went over to Ibiza and brought back house music, where house music had already been going on in different parts of the country and stuff anyway.
Yeah, I was buying house. I think it was like 86. I remember when the Trax label was coming out, and I was picking up loads of that stuff, Farley Jack Master Funk, and I remember Westbrook Records with Bam Bam's label with Where's Your Child and Give It To Me and things like that, and then DJ International was another one, and Grove Street. I was buying all of that stuff, and that was probably 86, 87 if I remember rightly. I think it's around that time. And you know what, I was buying it and I was playing it at some of the parties I was playing at, but I didn't really dig it completely because the beats just weren't having it for me. I'm not, that 4 to floor, it's just uninspired to me. But they were using synthesizers and samplers, so it had like a groove. Some of the bass lines are cool. I remember Jack the Groove, I like that one because that had an 808 in it. There was certain things, and I've sold a lot of that stuff over the years. Friends of mine who are more into the house have bought it off me, and I've kept a few of the favourites, some of the acid stuff, because I preferred the acid stuff. I preferred the bass lines in those. But most of that standard sort of that Jack in house sort of stuff is gone. Mr. Lee was another artist, and there's plenty of them. But I had it, and it didn't quite cut it for me on what I was searching for. It's not to say it was bad music, bad pressing certainly on the Trax records. Awful. Bits of label in the grooves, and labels right off centre, cutting off the last track, and just really badly pressed vinyl. Awful, in fact, and not good quality mastering either. A lot of this stuff was mastered from people's, just a demo cassette. taken straight and mastered from that. So, you know, bad quality, but, you know, there was a vibe going, and I was going along with that, but my heart was still with that electro sound. And like I say, I was still seeking that out. And whenever I found something, that was the one, you know, that was the stuff that I would want to play.
So we'll be digging into that with Greg Wilson in this episode. Greg has loads of great stories, so I hope you enjoy listening to it. Before we hear from DJ Greg Wilson, we have another exclusive on Spacelab, a sneak peek at a new track by Dynamix 2 and the Egyptian Lover. This is Destructive Beats.
Dynamix 2 from Miami with the bass. The Egyptian Lover got the beats are from LA. Electro kings together, we bringing heat like hurricanes and earthquakes. Destructive beats. Destructive beats. Destructive beats. Destructive beats. Destructive beats. Wait a minute. Destructive beats. Wait a minute. Dynamix 2 from Miami with the bass. The Egyptian Lover got the beats are from LA. Electro kings together, we bringing heat like hurricanes and earthquakes. Destructive beats. Wait a minute.
Before I started DJing against like early 2000s, I was in the car and BBC had a documentary on about Manchester. The presenter said something like, the reason that that house music happened first in the north, or earlier in the north and in the south, was because they were used to dancing to the up-tempo rhythms of Northern Soul. I remember thinking, oh my God, you're negating 7 years. Casino closes 71. And even then, the Northern Soul scene was past its height. It was on a downward spiral. And rave doesn't really kick in till 88. And yet you're saying that the reason in Manchester is because they used to dance into Northern Soul. It's not Northern Soul audience here at all. These are black kids. They weren't dancing to Northern Soul. They were dancing to Electro. And so when you have, and I think what they do, and that sums up in a nutshell for me, it's an easy edit for them now. It's like drugs, dancing all night, fast music, drugs, dance. Oh yeah, therefore we can conveniently tie them together, and there we have it. You know, Northern Soul happens, rave happens, and it's cut the rest out in between. But we can't know the story. You can't even start to approximate what happened in UK dance culture without having that. So all the books that have been written that have tried to tell you what happened, that have missed out street sounds and the electro and everything, they're just incomplete, or making up a hypothesis. Whereas, you know, that's where it's frustrating, is because when you're there and you see and you understand what happened, and it's not a hypothesis you're putting forward, it's just, this is what happened, this was the way that it was. I've been banging this drum for 20 years, just trying to kind of get people, because you think about it, that in any given music kind of genre, you know where it comes from and how it evolves and what it comes out of. And yet with this, you know, if you're reading a book, it's kind of mentioned very quickly and glossed over, as though you'd have some idea of what we're talking about but there's a whole process that came into play before, you know, it became, you know, a scene as such, you know, that the music evolved. And so, yeah, I'm noticing now that there's something going on. There's a few people doing different things at the minute that are kind of looking at this period a lot more closely, and you know, kind of standpoint from hip hop's, you know, if you want to take it retrospectively. I mean, that's one of the things that I think I've been realizing, how confusing it is. I knew this anyway going back, but I think it's still confusing to people, because there was a chart that came up the other week. I put it up on my social media, and it was a Black Echoes chart from January 84. And it was an electro funk chart, and it had in all, you know, like massive electro tunes for the time and everything, a couple of the Street Sounds albums and everything. But it was a really great illustration of that term, how that term was being used even then, January 84. And the hip hop wasn't in the vernacular, you know, it wasn't something, you know, I was trying to kind of work out on their hip hop where I first heard the term, and I know that Lindsay Wesker in Black Echoes had a column called Hip Hop, but it wasn't about hip hop, if you see what I mean. It was, he took it from hip hop bebop, Don't Stop, you know, Man Paris, which had been big, and it was just a catchy term that he, you know, I think previously his column was called Funk Finder or something, and it was the same thing. It was covering all the different sorts of music, not specifically one area. And then, you know, I remember, like, as the year went on, you know, if somebody would have asked me, you know, around that time, what is hip hop? I might have said a party. Is it a party? You know, the parties that was it. You never thought of it as a genre of music. You never looked upon it in that sense. And until the four elements were properly established, and although they were in the Buffalo Gals video, the Malcolm McLaren video, which was like massively important, I don't think it was until 84 when the BBC did a documentary called Beat This, Hip Hop History. It laid it out for you then. That now all the things that had gone on for the previous 2 years were scraps of information, bits of this, bits of that. This is the Bronx, you know, that you're working it out little bit by little bit. All of a sudden, there it was. It was just laid out. And Wild Style came around the same time on Channel 4. So that was on the TV for the first time. And I think at that point, that's where hip hop was now becoming understood as a movement that encompassed these different elements. And the music, you can see it in Morgan's albums, that the initial Street Sounds electro, that's what they're called, and then there comes a point where they become Street Sounds electro hip hop, And then there becomes a point where hip hop electro, and I think it might have even dropped the electro off right at the end, but it was just street sounds hip hop. And so you can see it exactly in that. And the big thing with Morgan and doing that interview is that Morgan has largely been written out of history. And by writing Morgan out of history, you write the whole era out of history, because you can't tell the story without understanding what street sounds and street sounds electro were, and how this was underground dance music that was now being made affordable to kids who hadn't come across this stuff before, but embraced it in such a, you know, enthusiastic way, you know, and obviously those albums were, you know, they influenced a generation of kids, and that generation, I imagine, because I look at them as the electro kids, who I would imagine you're looking at early to kind of late teens, but, you know, a lot of kind of 14, 15, 13-year-old kids who are like listening to this music. Now, in 5 years, they're 17, 18, 19. At the moment, raves happening. And I think that they were the ones that were primed for it. And you can see like people making music around that time that were definitely influenced by what was happening in the electro times. But as I say, if you look into the kind of history books, there's none of that. There's no connectiveness there. It doesn't mean anything in a lot of places. It's like, I kind of think on one level, it's that the people that maybe have realized how big an underground phenomenon it was, they'd have to rewrite everything, and it's not enough to just mention it in a little update or touch it. It becomes its own chapter, of course it does. You know, it has to be, you know, it's such a, and not just the electro, what happened before that with the black scene, with the jazz funk scene. Again, there's another area that's really been poorly represented, when it was an amazing time where black and white kids came together, you know, with this banner of music, and it was wonderful, you know, and it was a huge underground that was interconnected by all dayers and, you know, club events and everything. And out of that came, you know, the electro, as it evolved as a musical form, kind of infiltrated this scene. So it came in on the black music scene, and bit by bit became the predominant force with it. That's where my role was as a DJ. I was supporting this music against a lot of criticism at the time within those circles, because the attitude of the purists was, what's this got to do with soul? It's gonna like pollute the scene, it's ruining black music. So all these attitudes existed at the time, whereas in reality what it went and did was revive black music. And, you know, all the usage of the technology, the production techniques and everything, they went across the board in music, you know, from that. And so it, you know, ultimately it won through in that sense, but at the time there was a lot of resistance to it. they saw it, this isn't our music, their music being initially soul, because we're talking about scenes that really have their roots back in the 60s with people who were playing R&B like Guy Stevens at the Scene in London and Roger Eagle at the Twisted Wheel in Manchester. And why it's connected is those were the guys that were opening up the import channels. So they were initially writing to Chess Records and other labels and to get the records as quick as they could. And it was from these sources that eventually like mail order companies started importing records, selling, and then shops were opening up. And eventually, by the time we come along, you know, I mean, my period is from the mid-late 70s and then that early 80s period, but I was buying imports before then, you know, and you'd have to go to Manchester to Spinning to get it as quick as you could. I mean, you could buy imports in Liverpool, but they were being supplied by Spinning. So you had to get it at source, that's where it was. And so there were certain shops in the country, like in London, you know, Contempo in the 70s, and obviously Groove was famous going into the, you know, the 80s and the Electro days and everything. And City Sounds, which I thought was a great shop for Electro and stuff back then. But yeah, that was it. They were few and far between. It was not something that was around every corner. It was not something that whenever you picked up a magazine, you read about it. You had to know which magazines to read. You had to know which radio stations to listen to and which clubs to go to. So to get in on that information, you had to meet people who are involved in the scene, come along, see it, become excited by it, as a lot of people were, and get, you know, involved with it. And by that, I mean people were traveling to all dayers and then cross-pollinating by a club. So, you know, a crew from Manchester might go to Leeds or to Sheffield because they've met people at all dayers, and, you know, and that was it. So my audience in Wigan Pier and Legend in Manchester, and this is as electro funk into electro is happening, and not just from Manchester, but from Birmingham and Sheffield, Leeds, Bradford, Huddersfield, you know, like Stoke. The people were travelling in for these nights because this is where you heard it first. And I mean, sometimes I hear myself when I'm talking and telling people about these times, and then I kind of go and wonder, when I say, you know, this music was being played and this, that, do they think maybe everyone was playing this music? Because that wasn't the case. When I talk about playing this music, I was playing these records before anybody else. That, you know, I mean, I can't vouch for what was happening in London, but I certainly on the scene in North Midlands, because I was the one who went for this music. And, you know, when you talk about things like E.T. Boogie, for example, I definitely had that before anyone in the country, because I did a promo from Sunnyview, because I'd done my bit of looking at the labels and writing to America and seeing, because I got all the promos in the UK, I got all the British releases, I was on every mailing list, and that went back into the 70s, you know. But a UK release, even if they were quick off the blocks, I mean, right on the minute, it would still take 6 weeks to get out in the UK. They had to promote it, they had to get it into the shops, they had to press it, you know, all the things that they needed to do. So to turn that round, so if you were, you know, professing to be a DJ on this scene and playing UK stuff, UK promos, you wouldn't have got anywhere, because it was all about the latest music, how up front you could be, how ahead that you could be. So I was fortunate to be in a situation as all these tracks were coming through, these classic tracks that you'll know everything from hip hop, bebop to Scorpio to Alma Fish, all these as they come in, they're straight into these clubs and immediate response from the audience, because they're cutting edge audience who, you know their stuff, and that's how it all operated for that period of time.
electric. I sing the funk 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 electric. That 18 months between May kind of 82 and when I stopped DJing at the end of December 83, those clubs were just like, you know, right at the forefront of this movement and this music. And that's why I got in trouble, because I was championing it from a very strong position, because these clubs were, I mean, Legend was like queues up the streets, right, that period of time. Wigan Pier was a bigger club. Tuesday night, but we'd have hundreds of black kids come into Wigan on a Tuesday night where there was no black population. You know, it's quite remarkable now that I think back, but again, they had to be there because this is where you would hear the stuff first. And so, you know, I was fortunate to find myself in that kind of position, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy transition because, you know, I was very much kind of put down for that, you know, by people who, my contemporaries and people in the industry that, you know, I respected, people who wrote for magazines and stuff, even the record shop that sold me them, you know. My attitude to it and their idea of what soul was, I remember thinking that, I mean, I grew up on 60s soul. That was my first love. And, you know, I was major into Otis Redding as a kid. And I remember him singing stuff like, I can't turn you loose. You can't, it's just a groove, you know, the whole thing's raw. And I thought something like Planet Rock had more in common with that than maybe the latest Luther Vandross, which, although brilliant, you know, amazing voice, perfect production, it was kind of upwardly mobile music. It was, whereas this was the new raw, just like that was raw back then. And that's how I equated it. But the thing that, you know, kind of closed the argument completely was that the people that were criticizing me for doing this all seemed to be, from my perspective then, middle-aged white guys who were telling me what black music should be. Whereas the black kids who were in the clubs with me, it wasn't out, you know, they were, I mean, I remember once somebody said, you're leading them astray. You're leading them astray. And I kind of pondered on that. And I just thought, you just don't get it. You don't lead these kids anywhere. These kids are the leaders. You've got to connect with them. If you can have this reciprocal, which, you know, I was in a perfect situation playing what I wanted to play to people who absolutely wanted me to play that to them. So they were so receptive to this. So that killed the argument. It was like, who are you to say, you know, define what black music is? Go and see what the black kids are into. May 82 is a crucial time because that's when I know I got Planet Rock on import. And I know a few other things came in around about that time that defined what we were calling electro funk at the time, you know. Because if you go right back with it, the early stuff, the really early stuff, which is like late 81 to early 82, things like Stone Time, that had a different sound. Electric Funk on a Journey, that's what we originally called these tracks, electric funk. After that, On a Journey track, then you had, Italian track like Electro Feels Good, fell right into that. And then you start getting things like Cinnamon, Thanks to You, and the big one, the really big moment was Peach Boys, Don't Make Me Wait, because it sounded like nothing. Those kind of granite hand claps, it was sonically completely, and it said there's something different going on. So these are happening before Planet Rock drops. When Planet Rock drops, it's in a vacuum, and it's by no means something that's immediate with people. Even, in my clubs, there was a resistance to it. It was like May 82. To a lot of people, it's Kraftwerk. Why are you playing Kraftwerk? Why would you play Kraftwerk in a club? And to give you an example of how the mentality would have been, Grandmaster Flash Furious 5, Adventure on the Wheels of Steel, was released in 81. It wasn't played on the black scene, and it seems remarkable because it's one of the greatest black records, certainly of the late 20th century. It was a defining moment for what we came to know as hip-hop, and such a creative record. And the reason it wasn't played on the black scene, you might have heard it played more likely at an alternative venue, or John Peel play it rather than, one of the soul DJs. It had Rapture by Blondie in it. It had Good Times by Chic in it. It had Another One Bites the Dust by Queen in it. These were pop tracks to these people. So the snobbishness, in a way, once a track went near the pop charts, it was dropped from the upfront scene. It was now in the mainstream domain. And that's how the underground operates and works and feeds, and it fed the mainstream really well, because a lot of these records that we played as underground tracks went on to become chart hits, down the line, as did Planet Rock. But it was by no means instant with Planet Rock, because it was an outlier. There was nothing like it. There was nothing around it then. It was just this, it sounded amazing. It sounded incredible over Legend System. We had a system to die for. It was the first club I ever worked with sub bass, and where do you put it? But then in a few months' time, things are starting to change around a bit, and other things are coming into play. You've got the other Tommy Boy stuff that starts to come out, like Johnson Crew and obviously Planet Patrol, Scorpio, Grandmaster Flash, that's often forgotten. And then again, other things falling into it, like Klein and MBO, Dirty Talk, an Italian track. Now people look at that as an Italo disco classic. But that track was absolutely huge with the black crowd. And the only reason I was playing it in the first place was because at Spinning, one of the guys who worked in the shop, a guy called Harry Taylor, he serviced all the the gay DJs at the time. And so he was buying a lot of European imports. But he knew I was on this electric thing. I was going down this, and he pulled out a few things for me, and he said, check this out. And it was on the Italian Zanza label. It was right, at the start of it. And so that was played and immediately blew up. And that went further still, because Hugh and Clark, who was then at the Hacienda, which had just opened again in May 82, he picked up on it, because obviously it was now kind of biggest track on the black scene, and played it in the Hacienda. And New Order, when they were recording Blue Monday, asked if they could borrow it as a reference for the track. So these kind of tracks, kind of how they work out. two sides to this electro funk thing, and I only fully got it myself when I started DJing again and going back to some of these tracks after all these years and realizing something that sounded really futuristic at the time. You go, oh God, it's got a real bass in, or that's, you know, real percussion. That it's an amalgamation of the technology and the traditional way of musicianship. And I think that's why a lot of those records were so brilliant, because you had musicians programming the drums and stuff. That they weren't just somebody, a kid in the bedroom making. These were proper musicians programming these patterns and everything and stuff. So a lot of that early stuff was like things like Voice of Q, Nunk, Warp 9, all these kind of tracks, the Smurf, Tyrone Brunson. These were all within that kind of electro funk. Now you look at the term boogie, you know, that came with the rare groove scene and everything, and they look back on the music of the late 70s and early 80s, like the kind of disco funk, black side of disco, if you want to call it that, or dance. But a lot of electro funk would also fall into that category. So I think Sean P did a list for me of a boogie list, and the amount of what I would call electro funk in that list, you know, but that term has kind of somehow been lost. And then, you know, it goes, I mean, obviously amidst all this, The Message is released, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, again, electro funk to us. I can remember having an argument with somebody about, because I said, you know, electro funk track, and they said, no, it was a hip hop track. And I was saying, we had no clue what hip hop was. There was no hip. I don't think in the States they were calling it hip hop then. The term existed, but I don't think it was actually fully in circulation there. You know, but it's with hindsight now, people, oh, that belongs here, this belongs there, and they recategorize it. Whereas I suppose, you know, what I need to do at some point is properly list it and explain it a little bit more carefully, what falls into, because at a certain point I kind of saw a split between what I called electro funk and what you call, you know, full on electro. Now Planet Rock is that, Hashim is that, hip hop bebop is that, you know, these are electronic tracks completely, you know, and now you're hearing a kind of a sound and a direction emerging throughout this music. So, you know, certain things I see, you know, as electro funk, certain things I kind of see as electro. But as I say, even by January of 1984, it was still being called electro funk, this music.
Thanks to you, baby. Thanks to you. I want to thank you, boy. Thanks to Gonna have a ball tonight, 'cause everything's alright. Can have your cake and eat it too, that's why I'm singing to you. Thank you. Thank you. He's around when I need some loving. Showers me with kissing and hugging. All my friends say they see a change in me since I found somebody new. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. And once again I feel so free. So I'm calling just to let you know I thank my lucky stars that you let me go. Thank you. Ooh, I want to thank you, boy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't need your kissing, yeah. I don't need your loving, boy. Gonna have a ball tonight, 'cause everything's alright. Can't have your cake and eat it too, that's why I'm singing to you. Thank you. Gonna have a ball tonight, 'cause everything's alright. Can't have your cake and eat it too, that's why I'm singing to you. I wanna thank you, babe. Thanks to you. 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 I wanna thank you, babe. Thanks to you. Thanks to you.
You look at UK music culture and they look at, say, how they kind of bring up two great scenes. And you hear about them all the time. And one of those scenes is Northern Soul, and one of those scenes is rave. And then the thing that's in the middle of those two that is so crucial to everything that kind of happens subsequently is, as I say, this jazz funk into electro funk era, whereby the kind of imported black American music, the clubs playing this, you know, the radio stations, the all dayers, the weekenders, the magazine, you know, this underground, which is quite a sprawling underground. It was a big underground. That's why in the end, you know, when Morgan started releasing albums, it was receptive because that was all in place. Morgan was going to these clubs. He'd been in club promotions for years. He knew what was going on. He saw the music changing. He was, you know, even on those early street sounds, the first street sounds, I think The Message is on there, and a couple of other tracks that we would have called electro funk before he separated everything off into the electro and street sounds and everything. So, you know, that's what he was doing. That he was aware of what was happening and able to react really quickly to stuff that was coming out, you know, to have that kind of ear to be saying, yeah, I'm going to license that track. And he wanted them quick. He wanted to get them round, get them on the street. And like he said, he fell foul of a lot of people because they were importing all the 12s and finding they were having stock left on their hands because now Morgan's put it on an electro album and the kids are buying this rather than buying the 12.
Bending and stretching, oh, feels good. Push-ups, tune-ups, bending and stretching, oh, feels good. Only for you, just you. Only for you,
couple of things kind of conspired against it in the sense that it was 88 when Morgan's company went under. And when they did, it left a lot of people with their nose out of joint. There was a lot of people upset and lost money and stuff. So Morgan's reputation wasn't like very high at the time. And at the same moment that was going on, house was exploding. And I think that a lot of journalists at that point who in the past 5 years have maybe been writing about bands and stuff or indie music or whatever it was. Like all these kids, they took a little pill and all of a sudden, wow, this is great. And they saw it as something new. They saw it. And the original narrative was what I call the Ibiza myth, that somehow this house music had come from Ibiza. And with the DJs that brought back, the ecstasy and the Balearic spirit, it was very important what those DJs did. But they certainly didn't bring back house music. House music in the North and the Midlands was a direct continuation from electro. So the original house tracks, there was no house music. They were just another kind of electro. So, it was different in the South, in London, because the rare groove scene was so big in London that kind of took a lot of precedence. So I would imagine, well, I know that the early house tracks in London were played in the gay clubs, not the black clubs, whereas in the North, they were played in the black clubs. So there was this direct lineage going through. And that's why Hacienda happened, because it was the black kids in Manchester who brought that music into the club in the first place. And all that lineage leads back to, because electro didn't just influence hip hop. It influences house and techno. You can, with techno, for example, like one of the tracks that I was playing not long before I stopped was Cybertron Clear. And that was a full-on electro track as far as I was concerned. Didn't know it was from Detroit at the time. I mean, there are New York connections with it. The guy who mixed it was a guy called Jose Animal Diaz. And he done a load of the disconnect stuff. And also I got Johnson Crew, We Are the Johnson Crew, which I always played as a disconnect. And there was a hip hop bebop as well, which was a different edit. That so I pick up bits and bobs that suited me, from it. And that's where I come across his name, I think. But yeah, he was on Clear by Cybertron. So yeah, this music was all a direct lineage from the North. The difference in London, as I say, the rare groove scene, which on one level seemed like strange because it was a retrospective scene, and it's the only retrospective scene of its type that had a black audience. So Northern Soul, it was predominantly white audience, but Rare Groove. But the reason for that is it still was progressive, because the black audience was always forward looking. They weren't a Northern Soul crowd because they were listening to funk and listening to reggae, contemporary music at their time. And I think with Rare Grooves, though, it was all about the breaks. It was to do with hip hop. It was to do with now hearing these tracks. Where did it come from? The James Brown breaks, going deeper, looking at other stuff. So it was a progressive movement towards hip hop in a sense, but by going back into the past and digging stuff out and checking out, where stuff came from. The North was just continuing on this electro thing. It never went away. These other tracks came into it, which eventually became house. And then, it moves on from there. But the black kids were always wanting to listen to a variation of music. And even when I was playing in Legend and Wing of Cat, I wasn't just playing electro. I was playing, the big kind of disco funk tracks, or a bit of jazz even still, some soulful stuff. Just like the jazz funk scene was saying, it wasn't just jazz funk. It was like the kind of disco stuff that was fitted into that, the jazz stuff, more straightforward, So those nights were all, they were the predominant music, electro funk, jazz funk, but within that, there was a remit of stuff that was also a bit like the Street Sounds albums. I went across to the Hacienda and launched their kind of dance night there. And then Broken Glass, the breakdancers were like almost the resident dancers at the Hacienda and were kind of mini celebrities there in a sense. So there was that crossover there, and we had Houdini on at the Hacienda, we had Nutriment, we had like one of the first main breakdancing competitions. Although week on week it was very difficult to get it going there because they had a membership thing, and obviously the crowd that came to my nights didn't really have much money, certainly not to go and get a membership and then pay to come in a club. And also from their perspective, it was absolutely the other side of the tracks. They were like, well, they won't like us in there because they're all kind of students and indie kids, and so there was that divide at the time. But when they came in there, I did my own night the Friday, and as I say, we had some really good nights, but a lot of the time struggling. The sound system there was awful. Everything on the sound side was not good. But they give me a slot on the Saturdays to kind of try and acclimatise that crowd to what I was playing on the Friday nights. So I was playing all the electro and everything, and Broken Glass used to dance on stage to that. And they were loved. Everyone, the Hacienda crowd adored them, because it was great. When breakdancing started, it was so visual. It was like, wow, it just left people with smiles on their faces seeing what was going on. And it was so creative and spontaneous, off the cuff. Later it became more technical. I get it, that's how it goes. But in those initial stages, they only had certain moves that you'd seen on videos, and they were improvising other stuff into play and everything. And it was a wonderful time, seeing that happen. And just seeing the response. And we took Broken Glass on what I call a street tour of the Northwest, because they were dancing in Piccadilly Gardens, Manchester, when our first Kermit, who later in Rap Assassins, Black Grape, he was the one who said, we've got a crew together called Broken Glass and we're dancing in Piccadilly Gardens. And so on the back of that, I did a thing where I'd phone all the local newspapers and say, like Warrington or Chester, and say, this thing's happening in New York, and you've got to come down, it's amazing. And they'd send a photographer down and do a piece in the paper. And I used to have a scrapbook that was lost a long time ago that had all these kind of stories. And what was wonderful about that, though, and what stayed with me, I can remember being particularly, I think it was in a place called Widnes, and they were like in this kind of town square, and there was about kind of 10 Broken Glass, and it looked like a gang of black lads in an area where there weren't any black people. And you could see the kind of local lads looking at them, what the hell is this? Who are these coming into our... And they rolled out the lino and got the ghetto blaster out. And I kind of watched how it developed, that these lads, local lads, came to them and spoke to them. And it's probably the first time they had a conversation with black people. They were saying, what is this? What's the music? What are you... And it was beautiful. It was a real exchange that was going on. And that, you can see how that happened later with Street Sound, the Electro series. It brought in white kids from all over the country that had no context of black culture around them, but heard this music and knew that this is where they needed to be, because it did it for them.
Today's the way. It's a team, not a team, and we're here to stay. B-R-O-K-E-N, a G-L-S, a G-L-S, a G-L-A-N, a double S. The style of the street.
Now the stage is set, we'll be breaking new ground.
Say all about to spread the word around. Cause when you get on the bus, you gotta pay your fare. Because a ride out a ticket takes you nowhere. It's up to you to plant your own seed.
Initiative is what you need.
So don't give up, don't take defeat.
Get some inspiration from the side of the street.
Side of the street.
The music that brought it kind of into I mean, that's like Northern Soul, you know. I mean, it was a working class white movement of people that connected with this kind of depth of the black experience that was projected in music, had a relevance to them in their lives. I remember Eric Burden, who was in Newcastle, saying that his dad, he saw his dad work every day, you know, that it was akin to a sort of slavery, you know, how his father had to, all his hours were taken up with working, and when he wasn't working, he had to kind of eat and sleep and get back up to it again. And that was the existence for a lot of people. And I think they understood something about that music and the depth of it and what it was saying, even though it was relating to the black experience, but it was also universal in its messages. Just like the message Grandmaster Flash, that, you know, when that came out, any kid who lived in an urban environment, a house, an estate, they could feel that, you know. It meant something, it translated. It wasn't just the Bronx. This worked in Moss Side, it worked anywhere. It worked in, you know, Sunderland or Newcastle or whatever, you know, wherever there was, you know, deprivation. People understood that kind of, that message as it was.
Interplanetary hyperspace. Open up your mind. Q will answer questions anytime. Feel the gravity moving to a new reality. Open up your mind. You will send your thoughts throughout time. Let's communicate. Interplanetary hyperspace. Open up your mind. You will answer questions anytime. Feel the gravity moving to a new reality.
The Guardian wanted to do a piece, this is going back about 10, 15 years ago, a journalist called Mark Rowlands, he wanted to talk about how it was the black crowd that brought the music into the Hacienda, because, I discussed it and told him about it. And what happened was that I'm talking about the house music going into the Hacienda, the Guardian wanted pictures. And there wasn't a picture that would depict this thing for them. The closest we could get was Foot Patrol, who were the famous jazz dancers who adapted that to a house style of dancing. So they kind of crossed into house, but they danced professionally, and it was professional shots of them at the Hacienda, and it just wasn't right. You needed a crowd shot, and they left it, and nothing ever happened, and so that opportunity's gone. But what was wonderful was a few years later, this footage emerged from 1986, shot at the Moss Side Community Centre. And it's this packed audience of black kids dancing to house. This now, the year before the Ibiza, when I saw it, it was like, hallelujah, hallelujah. I mean, one of the weird things about it, which is it kind of throws it a bit. Some people, I've seen comments from people, say, and I've seen some people, but it was London DJs, Mastermind. And yeah, look, Mastermind were on that night, but DJ who's playing, all this footage is Mike Shaft, I used to do his radio show in Manchester, because you can hear his voice on the mic and everything. So Mastermind, would happen to be there. Because I think on one of the things up, it's Mastermind at Moss Side Youth Centre or something like that. It's put as that, but they're not the DJs at that point. It was Mike Shaft was playing it. So Mike Shaft, Colin Curtis, and Hugh and Clark. By this point, we're now playing all these Chicago tracks. So at the club called the Playpen, which was again run by the people who run Legend, and it's where these dancers, as they call Foot Patrol, they were jazz fusion dancers, and they kind of adapted that style to house. So there's a lot of footwork to the way they danced to house in those times. People like a guy called Gerald was a dancer. He's one of the kids who took that into the Hacienda. They are the ones that, because it's documented. Mike Pickering says that some kid from Moss Side came up with the Adonis No Way Back, and that's where it kind of started from. So yeah, so all that lineage as well, of how this kind of cutting edge black crowd took the music from out of the underground and found their way into the Hacienda with it. And for a few years, the Hacienda always had a really big black representation on a Friday night, the nights Mike Pickering and Martin Pendergrass were doing, the nude nights, the original nude nights, and then later Graham Park come into play. But later on, it became house all night long. And they were playing hip hop in there as well, hip hop kind of jazz stuff. Mantronics were massive at the Hacienda. We played live there and stuff. So it was all together at that point, it had all been together. When I was saying the scenes that I was previously involved in, it wasn't just one sort of music, but then when house came and when ecstasy came, it just became house all night long. And that's when it's the black crowd in Hacienda. Two reasons: the black crowd aren't into any type of music all night long. They like the variation in grooves and tempos and stuff. And on the second level, they had no dancing space left. It became so packed, it was sardines. So everyone, you just see hands and everything. And that's how we know Hacienda dancing, house music dancing. But the way they were dancing to it was, it was all footwork and everything. No longer was that possible. And so they moved on from there. And out of that comes, the black kind of crowd separate, which is a shame now, because we're talking about, we've had this era going from jazz funk through electro funk where black and whites and Asian have come together in these environments, and there's a real unity and equality within that situation. Everyone's there for the music, and now they're separating again because it's been taken over by these hordes of kids who really haven't come from a dance background but have taken some ecstasy, and now dance is the big thing. And so, but within that, they take the essence of rave and they take the essence of the hip hop break,
and they twist that and create, originally they call it hardcore, and that one's jungle, you know, and then we start going off on those lineages with drum and bass and grime, and, you know, so music always evolves, and how things kind of pick up along the way. But that's how it worked in the North, you know, it would have been different in the South. It would have worked on a different level there.
To the world's famous Supreme Team Show, WHBI 105.9 FM.
Chicago, by the name of Harvey, Andy, and Carizel. And they're some very good friends of mine. My name is Just a Lot of Superstar C.
And I have something here. The first call of the night goes by the name of Shakir from Soundview Projects, Kareem Everlasting, Equan Allah, and that's Rakim Barsha Allah from South Shore High School. They always make dedications with world's famous. Michelle from Bed-Stuy is checking us out. Dre B checking us out. Ace Ski from Brownsville. Brownsville.
It's making me itch.
Round the outside.
You know it.
Two buffalo gals go around the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Three buffalo gals go around the outside. Four buffalo gals go around the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Four buffalo gals go around the outside and do-si-do your partners.
I mean, we were talking about the fact that there was a show at Earl's Court in London in '82 that had Rocksteady Crew, might have even had Bambata. It was in Earl's Court. So I know that some of the early B-boys from London again stole a march there because they saw it close up before anyone else had seen it. And I don't know how that's kind of played out, you know, but I would presume that they would have been
quicker onto the streets with breakdancing because they're in the capital and these things are coming closer to them. From our perspective, the Buffalo Gals video was the one. It's funny with that track, it came out, like back end of 82, that's when I got like white labels of that. I remember thinking at the time, now I'm going to be playing a record by the manager of the Sex Pistols. I'm going to get slated. And so I knew that, but I couldn't deny the record. But I went up to London. I used to go up to the record companies quite regularly, and you go in there, they'd mail out all the records to you, all the 12 inches, the UK releases, and certain imports as well, certain companies do. But if I went round to London, I'd probably pick up, quite a few albums and things like that. I'd always get bits and bobs, by going in the offices. And I went it was Jeff Young, and he was at Phonogram, and he was the head of club promotions at the time. And obviously he knew what I was doing and playing and everything. I picked up a few copies of Buffalo, the 12, because I used to mix with 3 copies of them. So they were all like UK white labels. And while I was in there, he said, this has just come through as well. And he gave me a promo video. Not many people had videos then. It wasn't in every, it was only, nice one. Took it home, put it on, and had my mind blown, of course, on my own, and I know, even though Wigan Pier and Legend with these amazingly equipped clubs, great sound system and lighting, they didn't have video screens. And I worked at the time in a club in Huddersfield called the Stars Bar, and it was this bit of a ramshackle kind of, in the rough side of town kind of venue, the only place where they'd allow a black crowd. And we had this great Thursday night going. And they had a video screen, weirdly enough. And so I thought, I'm going to play them this tonight. And it got to, I think, about 1 o'clock, and I put it on. And I've told this story so many times, it's only one way to tell it. It's like, I understood in that moment what culture shock was. Because this was a really raucous, rowdy kind of in-your-face crowd, the Huddersfield lot. On my Electro Funk Roots website, there's a picture. That's them. That's that kind of crowd that I took from the booth at one point. And it was almost like I was saying to them, will you sit down on the dance floor so people behind you can see? I'm like a school teacher. I was saying to them, they all did. They were all like meek and mild because they'd just seen this. What the hell have I just seen? They wanted me to play it again. And so I sat everyone down, play it again, and play it again. And you know what? There was no point in going back into the night. It was all over. Everything changed in a moment for the people that saw that they'd seen the future, and it wasn't an instant reaction. It wasn't like the next week loads of kids were trying to breakdance. It didn't work that way. They were all quietly trying to work out how you did this, and it was, months. I remember talking to one of the Broken Glass dance guy called Danny Price, greatest breaker of his generation for my money. And he was talking about how he was trying to get the windmills, and he was just in his kitchen. He said, my elbows were bleeding, but he just kept going until he finally got it, so it was this dedication. And then in the following summer, that's when it started coming out onto the streets, and it was originally the Black Kids that were bringing it out at that time. So most of the crews were black. With there were a few white kids. Dave the Wave in Broken Glass was quite famous as a body popper, but it was a predominantly black thing at the time. Whereas that all changed with street sounds, because street sounds those cassettes for the Electro became, the breakdance kind of standard for all these crews all over the place now, everywhere in little shopping centres. They put their lino out, and they didn't have me to do a mix for them like Broken Glass did. So and that was the perfect thing.
And that's the way it is. People in the that's the way it is. Disillusion is the word that used by me when I'm not heard. I just go through life with my glasses blurred. It's like that, and that's the way it is. Huh!
Their first single came in mid kind of summer of '83. It's like that with Sucker MCs. Again, a massive legend tune. I mean, they were supposed to appear at the Hacienda with Houdini. I've got actual the kind of poster of it or picture of it, and it's great. My funk night with Houdini and Run DMC and Houdini. Run DMC and the Emperor No show. I don't know why they didn't do it, but they pulled out. But it wasn't a disaster because at that moment, many more people knew Houdini on the scene because of Magic's One, because that was such a big track. People often forget that. And I always think it's a great track as well because it was a signpost for what was happening. He's telling you in the rap what's happening. He's saying, some still say it's not what's happening after Rappers Alive went triple platinum. The record world was in for a smash. Sugar Hill Curtis Blow and Grandmaster Flash, he's telling this Mr. Magic, because it always seems straight Magic Swan. Why is it not Magic One? And then it's Mr. Magic. Who's Mr. Magic? And you kind of, these were the little kind of clues we were getting. It was so small, but getting some kind of sense. Something's going on here. Something's going on, and they're documenting that. And Thomas Dolby producing that as well, British producer, brilliantly producing it. What was good as well is I saw an interview, as I said, with Michael Hallman from Negro in New York, and he's talking about. He was the one who took McLaren to the Bronx. He's the one who hooked him up with Bambaataa. So he's, there's more detail. The only other play, in the Beat This documentary, there's great footage of McLaren talking with these kids, and there must be breakers in like a pub in London, and he's explaining, like this chisel sound I could hear, and there's the scratching, and I love it the way he explains it, because you are talking about something that we knew nothing of. It was right at the start, and he was just trying to find some way of explaining this, whereas it was so new. So yeah, McLaren, it's never mentioned with McLaren. It's never kind of, and how important is it? Everybody who was involved in this culture, Buffalo Gals holds a special place, It was such a shock, like I say, it was a shock that it jumped us all ahead. We were here, and all of a sudden now what? There's some guy spinning round on his head. How does he do that? It looks very tame now for what we've seen since. Nevertheless, there was never anything more shocking at the time to see that, to see someone do it, to see someone on the street, on pavement, upside down, spinning on their head. What is going on? And that's how the whole thing played out, that it was such a jump at that moment with that video. And then over the next year, it was finding anything you could. I remember there was Gladys Knight and the Pips of the track called Save the Overtime for Me, that they had some breakers in. There was also obviously Hey You, the Rocksteady Crew. And, I remember things like, or even on All Night Long, Lionel Richie, there was this kid popping, and he was like doing this Egyptian style of popping. It was amazing, and I remember the crew, like Broke Glass, just studying this stuff, and we didn't have much of it. One of the kids used to come to my gigs from Wigan Pier originally, and he started DJing himself, was Chad Jackson. Now, Chad used to basically come to my house and I'd leave him there just in the room because no one had Technics 1200s. You know, I had a pair. I bought a pair at the end of 82. And even the club, you know, Legend had 3 of them. Then you think, you're pressed, where else did, clubs didn't have these at the time. So he'd literally stay, I'd go out to work and I'd come back and he'd still be practicing. The guy was dedicated. And I kind of realised that he was hungry. I didn't have that hunger. I was at the same time getting into editing, getting into a slower approach of music, you know, and more methodical. And I was really getting off on that. And so, you know, I could see that that wasn't a direction that I was going to be able to take because I just could not invest the time to get, you know, as good as I'd need to be. And, you know, all sorts of other facts came into it around that time. It just felt like I want to produce. I mean, I was trying to remix records. I was going to I knew all the record company people. Can you get me a remix? I want to remix something. And they'd be like saying, well, you know, our bosses say, Americans remix. English DJs don't remix. You know, it's like, sounds silly now, but I was like, couldn't get the remix work. And that's why UK Electro came into play, because I met with a musician called Martin Jackson. And then we brought in another guy called Andy Connell. Martin had been in the magazine, who were like kind of post-punk band. He was the drummer. And Andy was in a band called Kalima, who on Factory also was in Certain Ratio for a little while. And one of the tracks was with Broken Glass. We did a rap track called Style of the Street, which Kermit and another guy, Brian Fiddler, Fids, they were the 2 rappers for it. And we wrote it between us. And basically, you know, that and a couple of other demos I'd done with the musicians, I took to a couple of record companies, including Morgan. And Morgan straight away wanted it, you know. Ireland were interested as well. We went with Morgan. And he sent us back into a studio for a week and we just recorded, just made it up as we went along almost. You know, we just had fun in the studio in a sense. And came out with these diverse tracks using a Lindrum machine and an emulator. I had an emulator and Martin bought a Lindrum. So Morgan, being Morgan, gets all enthusiastic and says, UK Electro, what we'll do is we'll give pseudonyms so it appears that there's a load of different bands or acts on this album. And he come up with all these names, like for the songwriting and Justin 84 and all this kind of madness. So on the album, all the tracks are our tracks. So the Zero, Forever Reaction, Sync Beat and Broken Glass is the same people. Whereas the other track is called Hip Hop Beat by the Rapologists. So that's more from the kind of Mastermind side of things. And I think Max and Dave might have been involved in that. And that was it. So he put out UK Electro. And it was too experimental almost for the black side. And it was too black for the white side. It never kind of quite fitted in
I mean, I wasn't DJing at the time, so I can't say what was happening. I mean, certain trap music was massive. It got like a Record of the Year from Record Mirror. But from my perspective, it all felt a bit shambolic in a way. I was almost a little bit, years later, a little bit embarrassed about it. Oh, yeah, you know. But then I went on Electro Empire, this forum, and it blew me away because, you know, I realised it's got this cult status. Even people saying it's their favourite of the Electro albums, and it's like, I never had a clue, you know. I just thought, oh, you know, it's a bit like first attempt at doing something, but you know, going back to it, you know, this, you know, I do have things like Style of the Street, for example. When we did that as a demo, I loved the demo because it was a little bit more gentler, and I think from my point of view, we over electrified it. So yeah, it is what it is, you know, and it was great, you know, like to get that response from people of your generation. We did one live gig, and that was at the ICA in London. And it was the backing tape that we'd kind of done, that the musicians were going to play live over the top of Broken Glass, we're dancing to them. And so it was like this continuous, you know, like kind of mix in a sense. So it was like an alternative to the album. Yeah, so UK Electro, I mean, it got to number 60 on the chart, which was, you know, fair dues for what it was, and it, you know, it had an impact on a lot of people, even if it was people who thought, I can do better than that, I can go and, you know, make a record. And you know, we were sampling very early with that, you know, stuff that we were doing, but it was just, as I say, it didn't fit into any particular bag. It kind of fell out of that one.
It's time.
if you look at disco, for example, you're talking a straight 4. So people obviously connect that to house, you know. But with funk, it was kind of, you know, it's groove-based music, which is what electro is. Electro's not just running off a kind of straight 4 rhythm. It's moving, you know. It's a funk, it's a groove, you know. It's like, so I just see it as a direct continuation, just like disco funk, you know. Like, as I say, you move away from the kind of classic funk of, obviously, your James Brown early 70s stuff, Ohio Players, Parliament, you know, Kool and the Gang, these kind of people. But towards the end of the decade, the disco things come through, but there's still these really funky disco tracks that, you know, are being made and everything. And that's what eventually was kind of raided for boogie, you know. So to me, it's just direct lineage, and it's to do with the rhythms. It's to do with, rather than it being a beat, it's a groove. And George Clinton, you know, had electro tracks, you know, Atomic Dog, Loopzilla was huge for us, you know, Hydraulic Pump even, which is a kind of hybrid thing, you know. It's one of those that was released, you know, just before all that. Clinton was obviously I think it goes back, you talking about Herbie Hancock before, and I think Rocket was such a moment because it killed the arguments of the purists as to electro having no musical value. And if you think about it in this way, that the previous scene that it was about to kind of finish was jazz funk. It was about to end. That was the end game, really, at that point. Jazz funks, you can go back to 73 and Herbie Hancock doing Chameleon as like an origin track of jazz funk. So it's almost like he started that and he ended it as well, you know, with Rocket by going electronic with it. So yeah, Rocket ended the argument. You know, you'd had Marvin doing Sexual Healing with the drum machine. SOS Band were going to come in with their styles, you know, and so all these kind of arguments that were beforehand now started to get a bit quieter.
so many hits come from the jazz funk scene. People don't understand it, just a huge amount. Because obviously you had Roy Ayers, Donald Byrd, Herbie Hancock, Idris Muhammad, Lonnie Liston Smith, all these kind of artists. But we also had all the UK releases, Bill, like Freeze and Lynx and Level 42 and, you know, Imagination's first single was kind of, although, yeah, their early stuff, the very early stuff, there was all sorts of bits and bobs happening for the UK side. And then there was tracks that, as I say, it was a scene as opposed to just that. So lots of records affiliated to it, kind of more on the kind of funk side than the jazz side, or even more towards the disco side than the jazz side were like big as well, you know. So it was just a very wide remit of records that kind of, and if you listed them, people would be shocked. They'd go, oh, right, is that jazz funk? That came from this scene. All these are records that were broken on that scene, you know, the upfront scene, and I mean, massive in London as well, with the Funk Mafia guys as well and everything. So it was a huge concern, but that was swept away with Rocket, really. I mean, it was all it was a losing battle for them. Jazz funk, at that point, there wasn't the records anymore. The quality is gone.
My life in the sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Folks get down in the sunshine. Sunshine. Yeah. Folks get brown in the sunshine. Just bees and things and flowers.
So blues and soul weren't giving much support to Electro. The guy who wrote the column for the North, so he did all the clubs, he wouldn't even write the word. He asterisked it as a swear. Frank Elson, he was completely, that was my nemesis at the time, Frank. I think he had about 3 asterisks in. You could see it was Electro, but there were the asterisks. So, you know, this is what I was up against. It was like, but on the positive side, though, Lindsay Wesker at Black Echoes was, you know, really on the ball musically.
was much more receptive to everything that was going on. He was, as I say, he's the first person to mention Mastermind in a piece. So Echoes, it doesn't surprise me, you know, that although I know Blues and Soul used to have a kind of electro funk top 10 in the late 83 in their DJ top 10s. I don't know, somebody in the magazine must have done it. So they were kind of warming to it by then, but they hadn't gone for it at all. And Echoes, as I say, I think that through Lindsay, they were more progressive. James Hamilton was the writer for Record Mirror. Record Mirror covered the whole remit of dance music. James was like, he wouldn't just list the BPM as in 1 BPM, he'd list every minute of the BPM on a track sometimes. So 134, 132, 131 and a half, chugger, you know, he was just incredible. So James covered all the music, electro included, you know, so it was just part of that remit. Apart from that, Groove Weekly, but they didn't really go for electro, they were more jazz funk. They were like a fanzine in London.
In the sunshine. Do what I do when I do what I do when I'm doing. In the sunshine. Do what I do when I do what I do when I'm doing. In the sunshine.
It was black science fiction. It was looking to the future, looking to with black culture, those scenes. It was always forward looking, that people didn't look backwards. Black people aren't nostalgic because really the past, it wasn't too clever in a lot of cases for a lot of people. So, you know, you're always looking forward, and I think that was the obvious step once Parliament came on the scene, and Sun Ra and people before that, and even Sly, and it just when it started dressing up and getting a bit crazy, and then it got spacey, and then it makes sense, and Electro was perfect. Because I mean, another thing about it, which is hard to explain to someone who wasn't there at the time, is it was the future we were listening to. It was futuristic. We don't hear futuristic music. We haven't heard, because it was the technology changing. So like drum machines coming to play, samplers, sequencers, you know, like, so technology was making it more futuristic and everything. So I just think it was probably a natural kind of progression.
around that time, there might be 7 or 8 tracks in that vein. And kids are coming up and saying, have you got that electric funk track? So it's not like this is, it's a word of mouth thing. And that was the first kind of term that was used until, and again, May 82, there was a track out by Shock, who were like a kind of disco funk band. And it was called Electrophonic Funk, with a PHUNK. And he's saying, it's not rock, it's not punk, we don't need new wave, just electrophonic funk. And that's what the thing is, and so it's relating to this new kind of sound that's starting to bubble. So that was almost like shortened. Electrophonic became electro. And then people were saying, have you got electro? And electro-funk was the term. If people wanted to say, yeah, it's like an electro-funk track, or it wasn't like at the time there were charts or this, that I was talking about. It was just a kind of descriptive term initially that people used. So I knew how it had happened in the clubs. And then I knew that Bambaataa had used the term in 83 at some point as a track, or is it Electro-Funk Breakdown or something? I'm not sure. So, or he said, he then called himself like the godfather of Electro-Funk or what. So Electro-Funk did come in later. So I didn't know whether we got it from him or I've looked back and I can't find him used the term anywhere before 83, and I know it's in circulation in 82 here. In the end, I said to Arthur Baker, I was like, did you ever hear? And he was like, nope, and I was like, could it have come from, the UK? And he was like, quite possibly. Years ago when I kind of realised that this wasn't being documented at all, and is there a sinister aspect to this? Is it because it's a black thing? What is it? And then I just realised, no, it's not. They just don't know. They just don't know. They weren't there. All right, they were there in 88, and rewriting about it and everything, but they had no clue what was happening in 85 or 83, or they could tell you about Joy Division playing a gig in, somewhere, or or the indie bands that were going on. They understood that, but they didn't understand what this was. They haven't been in these kind of environments. And a lot of people who've written books on dance culture are the same. Even like someone like Bill Brewster, when he was younger, he wasn't someone going out to the black scene. He was watching the factory bands and stuff like that, So, he's not going to have that same, place any importance on it because it didn't touch his life as such, it was. And I think that's what happens. You look at things, when you're writing, you're trying to be as objective as possible. That's what you're trying to do. Get all your facts right and everything. But really, no matter who's writing, it's still coming from a subjective viewpoint. You can't help but that. But what you've got to do, I suppose, is just to give yourself enough information and get kind of witness accounts from people who were in different places at the time, so they can say, no, this is how it was happening. Otherwise, you get a story where it says, well, hip-hop came in here with Rapper's Delight, and then by 82, and it's all hip-hop, and we don't, like I said to you, there was no hip-hop. So you've got to kind of, they want to simplify it. They want to simplify the story, not complicate it, not have to write another chapter and everything into it to even get close to, explaining. So that's why it's important, you getting these books out and different people doing interviews and kind of podcasts and stuff. And I just got a feeling it'll start to, I think the younger generation of DJs now are really wide open to music, and I think they're yet to properly discover this, and it will make a difference to them when they find it.
Thanks to DJ Greg Wilson for taking us for a trip down memory lane and for continuing to tell the history as it should be told. That's it from Spacelab this month. Join us in June for episode 6 with special guest Cosmo D from Nucleus, another pioneer of electro hip-hop. To see us out, here's the Bass Junkie in his regular remix spot, this time with a mega mix of the Teutonic Robots, Kraftwerk. Until next time, remember, it's all about the angle of the dangle.
Compute.
Everybody's got a little light under the sun.